Hello everyone, this is in continuation to the previous session which I just gave an introduction on Quality Center and also gave you a glimpse of how the dashboard of Quality Center looks like, right. So like I said, we have to start from releases in Quality Center, create releases and then cycles, right. So before we go further, let's define what a release and what a cycle is. So a release means a group of changes in a specific application that will be available to the end customer in production at a specific point of time as decided between the customer and us, right. So that's a release. Now in a release, since you're going to have a specific group of changes assigned, you will be having some software development done on it, and since we are talking of development, obviously we can't have a fault free application as we discussed in our previous sessions. So therefore, it's not possible to test everything and get completely bug free in the first shot. So you have multiple cycles. So a cycle is a set of development and quality assurance efforts, and this is done to achieve a goal which is good quality, and it's all defined within the parameters of the release timeline, right. So in a release, you can have multiple cycles so that you can fix defects, go to the next cycle, retest, you will get fewer number of defects, and then the third cycle, hopefully all of them will match your exit criteria, right. So you can move on to your to production and move it off, and you can proceed to the next release. So this is the release management process. So you define releases and cycles in Quality Center, the release tree, and then assign requirements. From there you assign test sets and run test cases or run the test sets. When you run test cases, obviously there will be some test cases for which the expected and the actual outcomes don't match. So that means defects, which most testers are happy to do log all the time. And finally you have analysis of releases and cycles, right. So this is how the process goes. We now will cover how to create a release and create cycles in Quality Center, right. Now coming back to releases, right. So if you look at this flow chart, suppose you have a release which is 2014 release, and in that release you have 3 cycles, right. Cycle 1, 2 and 3, and say in cycle 1 you have 3 requirements, 1, 2, 3, and requirement 1 converts to 3 test cases. So this is how the linkages happen in Quality Center. This is exactly how you can link back. You can link back from defect to the test cases to the requirements and to the release. So it gives you a full snapshot view of what's happening in your project and in your current release, right. Now this is the dashboard of Quality Center, and you can click on new release, enter 2014. So you get a new folder called 2014 here in the releases. So basically you clicked on that release on create new release. For example 2014 R4, and say you selected whichever start date which you have for this project, and also your end date, say 31st December, and you say this is 2014 release. Right. So this is your 2014 R4 release created, where you can see the start date and end date on this side. So this is back to the flow chart which we are talking about. Now in this you will click on new cycle. So you can create a new cycle, say cycle 1, and then you will give cycle 1 a start and an end date. Say a month's time is what we are planning to give, October is what you are trying to give, and say OK. So you within release 2014 R4 you have a cycle 1, and you can just create a copy of cycle 1 and just rename it to cycle 2 and change your start date and end date, as you can see on the right hand side tab, right. And maybe this is also you're giving a month's time. It depends on the project, whatever you feel you can give that as your start and end date. There is no hard and fast rule for that. That depends on the project release timelines and the guidelines there. So now you have cycle 1, 2 and you have cycle 3, which we have created for this release. So you have 2014 R4 release, and you have cycle 1, cycle 2 and cycle 3 created according to our flow chart which we just talked. So that's how the release gets created here. So basically we've gone and clicked on create a new release, right. And now after you have decided you have 3 cycles in this release, and you created 2014 R4 and you created 3 cycles over there, right. So after defining releases and cycles, you have to assign requirements from the requirement module to the releases and cycles, so that you can map which requirements are getting grouped together in which release, and from there you can map it to test cases, and from test cases you can take it forward to the defects. So now coming to the quality center screen, so that is the requirements tab. So you can see here that there are no requirements created here, right. So in whatever releases you have created, you have to link that to your requirements. So only then you will be able to trace the entire thing. So when you click on new requirement here, you can create a new requirement based on your project, but first let us create a new folder here. So what type of requirement? Say functional. Okay. So now you can create another folder called non-functional, for example. And in functional, now we will go and add some requirements. Say for this you click on check in. So you can check in the requirements, and whatever you are checking in you can put in comments here. So it is a requirement is checked in and somebody else wants to make some changes to it, then they can check it out and update the requirements. So everybody knows what's happening to your requirement. So that's why you do a check in and check out, right. Now when you right click on functional, you will get a complete right click menu. So you have an option of new requirement over here. Okay. So you can see the options over here, requirement, or you can click on the new requirement over there and go and enter, say, a requirement for this page. So this is a calculator page. So based on this page you will go and create, suppose this is your application which you are testing, right. So based on the requirement of this web page, you will go and create a requirement in the requirements tab of quality center, right. So you will enter, say, mortgage calculator and enter the function, either a functional or a business or a non-functional requirement over here. Enter the creation date, right. You will have to enter creation date, you will have to enter all the details over here in this tab, and whatever details you enter here, okay, and you have to select your release. So now for example, we have created 2014 R4 and say cycle 1. So you are saying that this requirement is related to this specific cycle and target release, and so far it is not reviewed, that is why it is in the not reviewed state. So this is the flow chart which I created earlier. So 2014 R4, okay, and cycle 1. So you are saying this requirement is related to this specific release. So, you can, and then you click on submit. Right. So, now you can see a mortgage calculator requirement created in the requirement tab here, and you can keep on going and adding new requirements as you need to your specific releases and cycles in Quality Center. So, we have created requirements in the requirements tab, right. So, you enter the details and enter the cycle and the release, right. Once the requirements are assigned, okay, and your test cases are linked to your requirements, the test sets which you will create in the test lab module are assigned to this cycle. Now, we will go into those details of how to create the test set and also the test case, but I am just taking you through the flow, so you can understand how it goes further, right. So, you thereafter, once test set folders are assigned to the cycles, then the test cases are run under that, and from there, okay, you will be able to log defects. You can submit a defect, and Quality Center automatically creates a link between the test case which has been run with the associated release and cycle which is just selected in requirement. So, the new defect is linked to the requirements. If anybody wants to know if the defects logged are related to which requirement, which area are you getting the maximum defects, Quality Center has that data to give you such a report, right. So, you based on this data, the manager can see how many defects were logged, how many are open. At a release level, you can have a look at it. You can track the progress of testing based on this in real. So, basically by creating releases and cycles, we are able to segregate our project goals and also understand which test cases are linked to which releases and thereby the requirements, and also review defects with respect to requirements. So, for a person at a manager level or a lead level looking at a project, it gives a bird's eye view of the entire project of to where the progress is and how you can do it. That is the reason you create a requirement and then assign it to the cycle and the release, right. So, the next session I will be covering how we will create a test case and thereafter the test lab and defects, right. Thank you.